Three oil marketers, AYM Shafa Limited, AA Rano Limited, and Matrix Petroleum Services Limited, are engaged in a legal dispute with Dangote Petroleum Refinery over the refinery's request to restrict import licenses, which the marketers contend could result in a monopoly in Nigeria's petroleum industry. Now, in a counter affidavit, these merchants assert that permitting Dangote to control imports and production would endanger national energy and security and competitive pricing, possibly leading to price increases and financial hardship. They contend that Nigeria's daily petroleum needs cannot be met by Dangote's present output and stress the necessity of import licenses to guarantee a consistent supply. Interesting argument right there, if you ask me. But of course, I will be unpacking this with Femi Olade, senior partner at Argento Capital Management Limited. Thank you, Femi, for joining me today.
Good morning, Perpetua. Always a pleasure to be on the show.
Absolutely, you can say that again. Now, while Dangote may have its fears or even concerns, do you think the company should be concerned about import licenses of other companies in a deregulated environment?
So it's a double-edged sword, Perpetua. What we're dealing with here is that the government has waited until Dangote's refinery was ready for operations and started operations before we had what we believe should be or to be full-scale deregulation of the downstream space. Unfortunately, the challenges that Dangote's refinery has is that, if you recall, a few shows ago, I always mentioned the fact that a refinery doesn't get into peak production where there are no, where the quality of the product is predictable and all of that. It doesn't get to peak production until probably between 6 to 9 months, if very efficient, and so pre-production. The problem here is Dangote's refinery is such a large refinery that the cost of this pre-production is so significant that it can only need a protected market for it to be able to survive. It's either a protected market or significant cash resources in its balance sheet. And that's where you're seeing around this competition that we're having. His claims are that, look, the NMDPRA's job is to protect local production. But again, if you look at the law, the PIA, which is the law that we use to govern that industry, it also leaves room for, alternatives where local production cannot match up or meet the demands of Nigerians. And I would always say that the demands of Nigerians should always, or the interests of, should always be the primary goal of government, not, basically making one or two players happy simply because they decided to make an investment decision.
Right. You said something I think is very instructive. You talked about, how that we may need to also look at the balance sheet and all of those. So away from that, before we continue, I would like us to take a look at the sections of the PIA that have been quoted by both parties, even though we might say that this has been withdrawn, but we still have to talk about it. Now, both of them are quoting sections 317, subsection 8 and 9. Dangote prefers to quote 8 and 9, while the marketers are just quoting 9. I'd like us to look at those right now, and I'd like to know, what you make of this.
So, I mean, section 317, section 318, section 219 all speak to the operations of the downstream space. In section 317, subsection 8, it says that the authority may apply some form of backward integration policy in the downstream space to encourage investment, which means that if there's a refinery that's functional and operational, then people should be able to, you should be able to protect that industry or that refinery from cheaper cheaper imports and anything that can jeopardize that investment. However, section 317, 9 and 8 now says that the same body can import or can license players to import product shortfalls that might be as a result of local refining not being enough to basically support the production or the consumption in the market. And it then specifies who can be given those licenses. So it's either people that have a local refinery, or international traders that have a proven track record of importing products. Now, the problem here is Dangote asserts that his production has
a capacity.
Enough capacity to supply the Nigerian market, and the marketers are saying, no, you don't, because you're not supplying us products at the price at which it makes sense for us to compete in an open and deregulated market.
Right, so pricing is the issue here, if you ask me, because we have a situation where Dangote is saying, I have the product, but marketers are saying it's not just about you, we're also looking at pricing. We want Nigerians to be able to get a product at affordable rates. And my question has always been, and will also be, are we actually saying that Dangote's PMS is more expensive than that which is imported? What is the mathematics, the brain behind this? I know there are some persons who are trying to spin it around, okay, you know what, because Dangote's product is, that's top-notch quality, while these other ones are blended and all of those. But what exactly is the issue? Why is Dangote's product more expensive than that which is imported? We need to understand that, really. And at the end of the day, Nigerians want to buy these products at cheaper rates, so.
No, so look, there are three players here. First is the average Nigerian consumer. That's the last end mile person who consumes the petroleum products. That guy wants to pay the lowest price possible for the product and ensure that the project whatever numbers you want to hold into could be $20 billion. Plus or minus. That is almost 30 trillion of investments that has gone into that business. Now, then you have, of course, importers who have the distribution capacity around the market and who are able to say that, look, if you're telling me I can actually find this same product at a quality that is acceptable to Nigeria at a lower price, why then are you compelling me to buy from a Dangote refinery to the detriment of the end user, which is the Nigerian? And if you looked at this from a purely business point of view, the reality is that it appears that the marketers have a sound form of argument that says, why should I be buying something that is cheaper internationally, more expensive locally? But if you also take it into the consideration that one of the powers that the PIA has given the NMDPRA is that it should protect local industries through backward integration. Then you can also argue that
monopoly
has a strong basis.
Yeah, go ahead. Go on.
That Dangote has a strong basis for pushing back and asking and demanding that they should buy from him. However, there's something about Solomon King, the wisest king ever, and people who are familiar with the stories would talk about the child who was dead and the child who was alive. Here, the person who needs to make the most important decision is the regulator to the benefit of Nigerians, not just to the private pecuniary benefits of Dangote or to the private pecuniary benefits of the importers, but the average Nigerian needs to be protected. And that's where the balance needs to come. NNPC have not had an issue buying from Dangote at the price that Dangote is delivering, but it is the marketers who are saying, we have the capacity to bring in these products at a price that's cheaper than Dangote's. Why are you compelling us to go and buy from him?
But you know what, Mr. Olade, what some Nigerians really want to understand is they want to understand the mathematics around it. How come what is produced here without the extra cost of freight and what have you is more expensive than that which is being imported? Is that really true, or is that what it is?
So it could be true. From an accounting point of view, there is a way we describe or we define costs. So costs are basically your input costs plus your cost of financing, plus your cost of running, management, sales, and distribution, and all of that. And there is the part that nobody's focusing attention on, and that is called depreciation. So depreciation is basically the amortization or the write down of the value of an investment over the life of that asset. So you see, for a refinery in Europe that has been operating for 20, 30, 40 years, the level of depreciation that is filtered into their base costs is significantly lower than the level of depreciation that a Dangote would need to do to arrive at his last mile costs. Secondly, Dangote is a newly built refinery. He's borrowed significant amounts of money to be able to build that refinery, and that would again build down into his costs. There's interest components to those loans that he's gotten and that need to be serviced. So when you do the cost build up, as you've mentioned, a new refinery naturally would have a higher cost build up, even though it may be more efficient than an old refinery. So it's going to take time for Dangote to be able to write down that investment, pay off its loans, eventually then reduce its costs before he can start competing in a very efficient way with old refineries that don't have his level of capex. So it is not that Dangote is being clever by half or is lying. No, what is happening here clearly is that the mathematics of price build-up puts Dangote at a disadvantage because he's a new build refinery.
Right. So if he's at a disadvantage, then shouldn't the regulator protect him and others who will be coming up after him?
I mean, look, the point here is this. The regulator is doing its best to protect Dangote. And let's be honest with ourselves. In the last 6 months, the Nigerian government has made significant concessions to the Dangote refinery. First, supplying crude in Naira, which is not,
you know, that's not just for Dangote, though it's starting with Dangote. That's for local refineries. It's not just a Dangote thing. It's going to extend the same, thing to other refineries.
Petra, how many other refineries do we have that are operational in the market today? So the truth is that when you just break it down, everyone is only going to look at the Dangote refinery. All the other smaller refineries actually are owned by people who have their own crude supply, so they don't necessarily even need to, rely on the NNPC or the oil majors to supply them with crude. And so when you look at all those incentives that the Dangote refinery is getting, the government has to make a long-term decision, which is, I want to protect local investment, but at what cost, at what price? If Nigerians are already complaining about the quality of life, if they're already complaining about the cost of living, who bears the cost of ensuring that Dangote survives? And unfortunately, this president has said subsidy is gone. He doesn't want to play in that subsidy play anymore. The only person who can help Dangote refinery survive is the market. And unfortunately, the market is saying that your products are to buy. Is that, the only reason why my product is more expensive is because you're bringing in cheaper and adulterated products, which means that the Standard Organization of Nigeria and the NDPMRA should be the ones, the NMDPRA should be the ones who are insisting that the quality of petrol sold in Nigeria must meet.
All right, talking about quality. I was going to ask if that has been investigated. Okay, Mr. Olade, if you can hear me, I was just going to say that talking about this issue of, adulterated products and all of those, has that claim been, probably investigated and verified? What do we know about it? What's the true state of these other products that are coming into the country? I mean, before Dangote, we've been using them and,
So, and that's the point, because look, the truth is that every cargo of PMS that comes into the Nigerian market is first and foremost tested in a laboratory and approved by the regulators before they can flow their way into the Nigerian market. So I think it would be a bit clever by half to suggest that adulterated products are finding their way into the Nigerian market without complicity on behalf of on the side of the regulator. So what what Dangote Refinery is effectively accusing the regulator of is complicity in allowing substandard imported products into the country. I think that's a very dangerous accusation to make without proof that this is really what is happening. But I don't believe that the Nigerian downstream regulators have a track record of allowing substandard products into the market. And to also just clarify to everyone who's listening that blending is actually part of the way that petroleum products are sold the world. products to get the quality that is approved by the regulator for each country.
All right, just before we close, I mean, marketers have sort of tagged this as a monopoly. You can either agree or not agree, and they also believe it's not in the interest of Nigerians or the economy. But my question is, if a company is concerned about its bottom line, shouldn't it rather make its product more attractive to marketers or do some other internal things within, its own processes to address it? I mean, what do you see here? Should we all be concerned about this? Should this be everybody's business?
Oh, Perpetua, it has to be everybody's business. We're very much when it comes to fuel prices. Since when I was a kid, if there was one thing you wanted to get all Nigerians agreed on, just introduce fuel prices of football. And today, we don't really care much about football. We're all trying to survive. So the truth is that it is in all our interests that this is resolved to the benefit of Nigerians. And I cannot overemphasize that part of the conversation. The average Nigerian is looking for good quality products at a market-determined price. A market-determined price has to be a price at which, if anyone went to an open and competitive market, they would be able to buy products. And I think that, which is where the government, unfortunately, doesn't have much of a choice other than to ensure that this is resolved one way or the other. The truth is that we're competing with two decisions here. Do we allow a monopoly because we have one dominant refinery, or do we allow an open, free, fair market, which means that the one dominant refinery that the country and the investor has spent significant amounts of cash building may die before it actually sees the light of day. That balance is one that we need to actively find, and the government has to be very deliberate in how they find that balance and ensure that Nigerians are the winners at the end of the day and not just the investors.
Well, I should also add that nobody's actually stopping Dangote from exporting. I mean, he can always do that. But away from that, to import or not to import, what exactly is in the best interest of Nigerians? And what do you think should be prioritized to ensure, sanity in the sector? We've been going back and forth for too long.
Look, the truth is that in our long-term interest, or to our long-term benefit, we have to get to a point where we're not an import-dependent economy. It is preposterous that for 20 years, through illegal, corrupt, and complete ineptitude, we allowed ourselves to get to a point where we couldn't refine 1 liter of crude from our refineries, despite being one of the largest producers in the world. We have a refinery, though it's not yet operating at that level. And then secondly, we have a number of other refineries that could come to the market in the next few weeks. In the next few years. The NNPC refineries are being rehabilitated as we speak.
Okay.
The Bua refinery is being constructed as we speak. So which means that effectively, Perpetua, in the next 24 months, Nigeria is going to be a net exporter of petroleum products.
All right, Mr. Ladei, I'm afraid we have to go now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.